Hey, guess what? The off season is over. Good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yep, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, live on LouTube for you. Thanks for watching. It's Sunday morning. And that can only mean one thing. I'm just kidding. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Obviously, no one's season is over. That's not what this is. This is the Your Season is Over video, the off-season edition. So the off-season is over. And I just want to take this opportunity to talk about 1 or 2 or 10 teams. So I decided to do it in the format of a Your Season is Over video because I'm just so damn excited for the start of the season. And more importantly, the start of the Your Season is Over videos. The only Sunday morning college football recap show that actually matters. That's right. That's right. A lot of you know what I mean. You've been around. You know about the Your Season is Over videos. So kind of a similar thing. What do you think about the new helmet wall? You remember the helmet wall used to end right here. Believe it or not, the helmet wall ended right there. So all of that, in other words, I extended the wall the entire length, or I extended the shelves the entire length of the wall. I now have every single one of my helmets up on the wall. Every single one, except the Ivy League. I kept the Ivy League separate down here on the windowsill. It's just become its permanent home. But the giant stack of helmets that used to be on the floor right there, all of them up there. What did I do? Top 10 on the bottom. So 1 through 5 over here. 6 through 10 over here on the bottom shelves. Everything else is in alphabetical order. Second shelf starts with Arizona. And then all of the Power 5 helmets in alphabetical order all the way up through Wisconsin. Every Power 5 helmet. I've got every Power 5 helmet. After that, alphabetical order for the non-Power 5. The Akron Zips, App State, Ball State. It just continues on and on. Coastal Carolina, Colorado State, East Carolina, all the way down the rows. Blah, blah, blah. UTEP, Tulane. Anyway, you get the idea. And then the service academies get a spot all their own. Anyway, redid the helmet wall yesterday. Let's get to today's video. It's not a your season is over. Season hasn't even started, so already probably somebody's typing, season over, didn't even start. No, it isn't a your season is over video. Just wanted to do it the style of your season is over. I want to talk about these teams here, and I've broken them down into a couple of categories just to try to, honestly, just to make my life easier, to keep me on track in this video. What I have here is, you see this stack of teams here? Penn State, Georgia Tech, Miami, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. You see those teams there? I even wrote it down. These are the teams, I think they're glad the offseason is over. These teams are glad the offseason is over. This is a second topic we'll get to, and this is a third topic we'll get to with these helmets here. Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Miami, Georgia Tech, Penn State. They're glad the offseason is over. Start on the top and work the way down. Texas A&M, why are you glad the offseason is over, and where do you go on this shelf? Well, that's easy. You go right here after Texas. I think Texas A&M is glad this offseason is over. Terrible year last year. 5-7, horrendous. Picked in the top 10 in a lot of preseason rankings last year. Definitely has top 10 talent. A lot of momentum coming off of a huge recruiting class. And they just absolutely crap to bed all year long. I don't want to get into all that again. We all know what happened last year. But because you were so bad last year, and again, let me reiterate. Pointing and laughing is about expectations versus reality. Going 5-7 is not funny in and of itself. If Vanderbilt, where is Vanderbilt? URSTUNV. See, it makes it so much easier to find now. If Vanderbilt goes 5-7, it's not funny. No one's going to run around pointing and laughing that Vandy went 5-7. They don't have top 10 talent. They're not paying a coach $10+ million a year. They're not Texas A&M. It was funny that you went 5-7 because it was so far off of expectations. All off season, you've had to hear about it. You go out, by you, I mean Jimbo Fisher, and make a look, it's a big offseason hire. Whether it pans out or not, we'll see. But the Bobby Petrino thing, right? You bring Bobby Petrino in. All offseason, you've had people wondering out loud, how much control is Jimbo really going to give to Bobby Petrino? Will the offense finally kind of wake up and start mattering at Texas A&M in 2023? How are they going to respond to such a terrible season last year, losing record, missed a bowl game, one of the worst, if not the worst teams in the SEC? How are they going to respond to all of that heading into 2023? When you have a terrible year like they had, a point and laugh season where you picked in the top 10 and you finished 5-7, the offseason drags on forever and ever and ever and ever. As opposed to, I don't know, a team like this who has thoroughly enjoyed the last two off seasons, right? So Texas A&M, I think, is glad that the offseason is coming to an end. If Texas A&M, if 2023 starts and Texas A&M is winning games, people are quickly going to stop talking about 2022. First early test on the road against Miami, and then, of course, they run the gauntlet of SEC teams on their schedule, including, of course, Alabama and Texas A&M. So we'll see how they fare with all that. Still, I think Texas A&M is a team that's glad the offseason is over. Oklahoma as well, for a lot of the same reasons. Where does Oklahoma go? Well, that's easy. They go right in front of Oklahoma State. Man, this is so easy. I'm so glad I alphabetized this. Makes Uncle Lou's life easy. Oklahoma, another team that was terrible last year. Biggest difference between Oklahoma and Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher's been at Texas A&M for 5-6 years now. It was Brent Venables. Not only was it Brent Venables' first year at Oklahoma, it was his first year ever being a head coach. And it couldn't have gone any worse. It just couldn't. There's always a little bit of questions, I guess, when you make a coaching change. When you make a coaching change and bring someone in who's never been a head coach before, there's, of course, even more questions. But Oklahoma's a team that had been close to the top of the college football world for the majority of years in the college football playoff era. They had made 3 or 4 playoffs in a row. Now, we all know the difficulties they had once they got there. I mean, they never won a playoff game. We get that. But point is, they were a top 5 program of the playoff era. You bring Brent Venables in, and it just pretty much anything that could go wrong did go wrong. They had injury issues. Brent Venables had some first-year head coaching issues. The defensive issues is what were the most alarming, though. You bring Brent Venables in, a defensive genius, specifically as a reaction to what happened under Lincoln Riley, which is no defense at all. And I don't think anybody was expecting Brent Venables to sort of turn Oklahoma into a top 10 defense in the first year. You need talent and recruiting classes and coaching and a couple of years of getting your system in place to even hope to get there. But I do think most people expected some noticeable improvement, and you didn't get any. You got none. It was horrible. You gave up like 30 points or more in half your game, something like that. Of course, 49-0 to Texas, which is unacceptable for Oklahoma in any year. So it's been a long offseason for Oklahoma because at least, like we just did Texas A&M, right? At least if you want to be like a glass half full type of guy for Jimbo Fisher, you can go, well, he did win a national title 10 years ago at a different school, so there's hope. With Brent Venables, we still don't know if the guy's going to be a good head coach. That doesn't mean I think he's not going to be. But there's zero evidence to support that he will be because he's only been a head coach for 1 year, and it was a complete and total disaster. Now, somebody in the comments is going to point out, so I can just do it here. There are plenty of successful college football coaches who didn't have a successful first year as a head coach. So again, I'll reiterate, I'm not saying that because Oklahoma was terrible last year means Brent Venables is a terrible head coach. What I am saying is that so far, there's no evidence that he's a good head coach. Now, that could all change this year with a 9+ win season. I think if they win 7 or 8 games, it's kind of just like, well, okay, kind of a step in the right direction, I guess. But I don't think that's really going to get people all that excited. I think if Oklahoma can win 9 or more games, then I think that's an obvious step in the right direction. And you're going to have to say, okay, maybe Brent Venables can get this thing where we want it to go, right? So we'll see. But it's been a long offseason for Oklahoma. Brent Venables doesn't have any positives to fall back on to offset the negatives of last year because it was his first year. A humiliating blowout loss to their rival Texas, 49-0. For those 2 reasons alone, Oklahoma cannot wait for the offseason to be over and actual games to be played. Here's the thing. Now, of course, you run the risk, and this goes for any team over here that we're talking about today and any of the other teams that are left up on the wall here. Obviously, if you have a bad year, the offseason sucks because you got to hear about it basically for 8 months when there's nothing else to talk about. There's no games to talk about, right? So you want the season to get here. You want the season to start. You run the risk of the season starts and you start losing games. So instead of laughing at you for what you did last year, we start laughing at you for what you're doing now again. So I get that that's a risk, but the only way to put last season in the rearview mirror from fans' perspective anyway, is to start playing games in the following year. Again, just like with Texas A&M, if Oklahoma comes out this year and starts winning games, people are going to stop talking about how bad they appeared to be last season. Nebraska's got to make a bowl game. It should be obvious why they want this thing to be over. Let's put them right here where they go between NC State and North Carolina. It's alphabetical order, straight fire. Brand new head coach, Matt Rule. The last coach just did not work out, Scott Frost. Scott Frost never even had a year as good as the final year the previous coach had, which is the year that got him fired. Was it Solich? Whoever it was. I believe he won 9 games, and they're like, no, this is no good. They fired him. Bring Scott Frost in. He's there 4 years, can't make a bowl game. Was it 4 or 5 years he was there? 18, 19, 20, 21, 20, whatever it was. It doesn't matter now. He's gone. Complete disaster there with him. And we can debate the reasons why. None of that really matters. Matt Rule is there. I'm a believer in Matt Rule. I saw him turn Baylor around. I know it didn't work out great for him in the NFL, but by the way, I got in this argument with somebody the other day, and so I'll just ask y'all in the comment section right now. Matt Rule was not a success in the NFL. To me, that doesn't mean anything in terms of his ability to coach in college football. Nothing. If a guy is an absolute beast in the NFL and goes 100-0 every year, I don't think that means he's going to come to college and be a successful coach. If a guy goes 100-0 in college every year and goes to the NFL, I don't think that's going to be, that's been proven. Head coach of an NFL football team and head coach of a college football team aren't even the same job, in my opinion. And I had a guy arguing with me the other day, coaching football is coaching football. No, it's not. Maybe you can argue that a position coach is way more similar one to the other. If you're a great defensive line coach, you probably will be successful coaching defensive lines in college or the NFL, either one. Head coach is a totally different animal, in my opinion. In college, it's all about roster management, and that pretty much falls on the head coach. You got to keep, the 85 scholarship number. You got to constantly be recruiting. Now you got the transfer portal. How many players are you going to lose to the portal versus how many can you bring in? How many you lose and how many you bring in affects how many players you can sign in the following recruiting class, right? There's so much around being a head football coach in college that doesn't even apply to the NFL. In the NFL, head football coach is the head football coach. He's kind of the CEO of an organization, delegating responsibilities. And I know they have free agency and salary caps and things like that in the NFL, but in the NFL, you have an entire personnel department that handles all that. You've got general managers, you've got talent, you've got personnel guys that go and do all that. So anyway, I just don't think it's even the same job, and somebody want to argue me about it. Anyway, so the fact that Matt Rule didn't do well in the NFL means nothing to me. I saw what he did at Baylor. Took him 2 years to turn that thing around. He's a little more experienced now. I expect a year one turnaround for Matt Rule at Nebraska. I think Nebraska is going to make a bowl game this year for the first time since anybody can remember. I truly believe that. I'm that high on Matt Rule. Now, I don't think they're winning the Big Ten West. I don't think they're winning 10-plus games. I don't think they may not even crack the top 25. But they're making a bowl game. And you're going to say, well, that's bare minimum, bottom of the barrel type goal. Again, they haven't made a bowl game in, 5-6 seasons? So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where it has to start for Nebraska. I think this is going to be the best season Nebraska's had in a while. And I think they're going to continue to improve over the next couple of years. I still have questions as to whether or not Nebraska can ever become a top 10 program in college football ever again, for a whole bunch of reasons that I've been over a bunch of times before. Nebraska's in the middle of nowhere. There's not a single person growing up right now watching college football that remembers Nebraska being any good. They're in the Big Ten as opposed to the Big 12. That's cost them some in recruiting in the state of Texas in particular, but even more than that. It's a much tougher road to hoe for Nebraska now that they're in the Big Ten than when they were in the Big 12 previous. So there's just a lot of that. So I don't know that they'll ever get back to being one of the top 10 programs in the country, but there is absolutely no reason Nebraska can't be winning 7-8+ games a year, right? This streak of not making a bowl game is ridiculous. So I think Nebraska should be excited that the offseason is over. Enough talk about what Matt Rule might do or could do in his first year at Nebraska. It's time to start finding out exactly what he is gonna do. And they've got to beat Colorado. That's what they got. Did I put Colorado on this list? No. Did I? Yeah, we'll talk about Colorado in a minute. Nebraska plays Colorado. Anyway, Nebraska, I think, is ready for the offseason to be over. Miami. A lot of what I said about Texas A&M, you can take out the word Texas A&M and add the word Miami, which, of course, goes right between Maryland and Michigan State. Where's Michigan? Woo. Right down here at number 2. Right down here at number 2. Mario Cristobal doesn't have the national title to fall back on that Jimbo Fisher has from 10 years ago at a previous school, but like Jimbo Fisher, Mario Cristobal has changed Power 5 schools and stepped into a place with a lot of expectations. Miami. Miami hasn't been as bad as Nebraska over the last 5 or 6 years, but like Nebraska, they have just vastly underperformed. And in Miami's case, it's been more than 5 or 6 years. It's almost become a punchline at this point. And it's almost not even worth saying because everyone knows it. But just really think about it, though, instead of just saying it because you hear it so much. I want you to really think about it and what this statement means. And if you could somehow travel back in time 20 years, Miami has been in the SEC for going on 20 years. It has never won it. Not a single time. And I'm not laughing or hooting and hollering because I want you to really just think about that statement as a fact, as opposed to a throwaway trash talk line that's been used on the internet a million times, because it has been used a million times on the internet. I don't think there is a soul on planet Earth who 20 years ago would have made the bet that, hey, Miami's about to join the ACC. Okay. I bet you by 2023, they have 0 ACC title. There is not a soul alive would have made that bet. It's so shocking. I feel like we're numb to it because of because it gets mentioned so much in trash talk. Miami can't even win the ACC. Been in there 16 years. Been in there 17 years. Been in there 18 years. Been in there 19 years. And it just keeps getting. That's one of the most shocking stats in modern college football, is that Miami has been in the ACC for 20 years and never won it. They've only even made the ACC title game one time, right? That's a shocking stat. Now, unfortunately for Miami, it's not a stat that's getting turned around this year. But like Texas A&M, they had a disastrous season last year. Like Nebraska, it was with a first-year head coach. Not Nebraska. Nebraska's got a first-year head coach coming up. Miami's going to have a first-year head coach this season, or last season, Mario Cristobal, and it didn't go well. Comes down from Oregon, a lot of hype, a lot of expectations. We know he can recruit. We know he's a great talent evaluator. We know he's really good at stockpiling talent. He did it at Oregon, and he's doing it at Miami. Now, whatever you think about Mario Cristobal as a coach, or whatever you think about Miami's talent level on its roster, whatever you think about their recruiting, whatever, I can guarantee you Miami is going to be a more talented team this year than they were last year. They're going to be a more talented team next year than they are this year. And in 2025, they're going to be one of the 10 most talented teams in the country. That's just a fact. I know that beyond the shadow of a doubt about Mario Cristobal. What I don't know is, can he coach those players up to expectation? Because so far, he's really been unable to do that. He did have a couple of good years in the Pac-12, but never had that true breakout year, never made the playoffs, never even came close, really. There was one year where they were a little bit close, and it's boneheaded losses in November, which has really been something that's plagued Oregon even outside of Mario Cristobal. Then he comes to Miami last year, and it just all fell apart. Injuries just tore the team up, particularly on offense. They didn't have a whole lot of talent to start with. They played 2, 3, 4 different quarterbacks, lost to Texas A&M, got blown out at home by Middle Tennessee State, got blown out by Duke. There's not a lot of positives to find about last year's Miami team under Mario Cristobal, his first year there. Surprisingly, though, Miami fans have been pretty quiet this offseason. And you might be thinking, well, they were terrible last year. Of course they've been quiet this off. No, they've been terrible since YouTube was invented in 2007 or whatever it is. Miami fans traditionally are one of, if not the most loudest fan bases on the internet. Love them or hate them, there are a ton of Miami fans, an absolute ton. In terms of just social media presence, Miami's in the top 10 in terms of fan bases or teams that are represented social media. Miami's in the top 10. Not this offseason. They have been uncharacteristically quiet this offseason. Again, some of that's obvious. 5-7 last year. They lost to their rival Florida State. At least some years when Miami's bad, they beat Florida State, so they can at least yip about that all offseason. Don't even have that to fall back on this year. Embarrassing loss to a group of 5 team, blown out by Duke, a basketball school. It's just really, really bad. So they've been awfully quiet this offseason, which leads me to believe They're ready for this offseason to be over. They want more football games. Miami's ready to play. Miami's ready to see, can Mario Cristobal really coach these guys? Miami fans are ready to find out, okay, we had a pretty good recruiting class, probably going to start a couple of true freshmen on the offensive line, some other key spots around the field. Got Tyler Van Dyke back. Guy was a Heisman contender 2 years ago. Last year, complete disaster, injury, didn't play well even when he wasn't injured. What's going to happen year 2 under Mario Cristobal? You see a lot of steps forward in year 2 under head coaches. They're in the ACC. Not a lot of hurdles to jump over, right? Still got to play Florida State. They look to be pretty good this year. Anyway, so it's been weird to me that Miami fans have been so quiet, and that leads me to believe they're ready for this offseason to be over. They're ready for next month to roll around and start playing some football games, and I don't blame them. Here's another one, Georgia Tech. Now, look, I've got no love for Georgia Tech. That's not a secret or a surprise, even. At least it shouldn't be. I'm pretty sure that it's not too, and also. Brent Key. Georgia Tech fans, unlike Miami fans. How's this for a weird sort of observation? At least from what I've seen, Georgia Tech fans are louder on the internet this offseason than Miami fans are. Don't know that I've ever been able to say that before. And I think Georgia Tech fans have some reason to be optimistic. I know they've been terrible, pretty much a 3-win team for the last 3 or 4 years under Jeff Collins, but he's gone, Brent Key's in. And if you look at what Georgia Tech looked like, forget about even wins and losses. And they won some games. I'm not saying they didn't, but forget, it's not even so much about that. There was a clear difference in the product Georgia Tech put on the field immediately after Jeff Collins was hired versus what they were under Jeff Collins. They were just a better team right away with Jeff Collins not around. I don't know what that means. Does that mean the players didn't like him, didn't respect him, didn't trust him, didn't buy in to what he was selling, whatever? I don't know. Does that mean Brent Key is just the most amazing thing Georgia Tech's ever seen? I don't know. Maybe some combination of all of that. But if you watched Georgia Tech last year, they were so much better the last quarter of the season than they were before that. It was hard to believe. I think they beat North Carolina. It was probably their best win, I guess. They were beating Georgia at halftime. No, was it tie? They were beating Georgia early in the game last year. They scored first on Georgia, so they were up, I guess, 7-0 for a while. And then I think Georgia kicked a field goal. It was 7-3. They played Georgia. The score got a little out of hand late in the second half, but, depth and talent just prevailed on that. But the first 2.5 quarters of that Georgia Tech game is probably the toughest I've seen Georgia Tech play Georgia in years. And I'm not saying that means they're winning 10 games this year or winning the SEC or anything like that. But much like Nebraska, I would be willing to bet you that Georgia Tech finds a way to make a bowl game this year. And again, just like I said with Nebraska, whoopity-doo, that's the bare minimum, scratching the bottom of the barrel. Again, 3 wins, 3 wins, 3 wins, 3 wins in 3 years in a row. And then what did they win, 4 or 5 last year? A bowl game this year in Brent Key's first full year as head coach would be a huge step in the right direction. And let's not forget how much talent, high school talent, there is in the state of Georgia. And Georgia Tech right now is having a hard time attracting some of that elite talent, not just from the state of Georgia, but from anywhere. Some wins on the field could change that. Atlanta, is a huge area, both for recruiting. And this is a big year, I think, for Georgia Tech. A big year, because if Brent Key comes out and doesn't perform well, and it turns out that it was just like a quick sugar rush at the end of last year under Brent Key, and now he's in charge whole offseason, you come out and it's sort of the same 3-4 win result type season, that's going to be backbreaking for Georgia Tech. However, if they come out this year and win 6-7 or even can you imagine if Georgia Tech went 8-4? I don't know if they can win 8 games, but the bare minimum to me, they should be able to make a bowl game and get to 6-6. They're happy to see this offseason over. Penn State. Every year, people do Penn State. No, people don't pick Penn State every year. You know why? Because every year they go 10-2, 9-3, lose to Michigan and Ohio State every year. This is the year they ought not do that. They got to beat one, if not both of those teams this year. Penn State could be this year's Ohio State. Penn State could be 11-1 at the end of the season and find their way in that 4th spot of the playoffs like Ohio State did last year. In my opinion, it all comes down to Drew Allard at QB. But, man, they are so ready to get this season started because I do think this is the best chance Penn State has to win the Big Ten and make the playoffs since 2016, which is the last year they beat Ohio State, the last year they won the Big Ten. They didn't make the playoffs that year, but I think they got a chance to do it this year, even if they don't win the Big Ten. Obviously, that would be the goal. Go 11-1 or 12-0, make the Big Ten title game, win it, and you guaranteed a spot in the playoffs if you're a 12-1 winner of a Big Ten title. But even at 11-1, they could be this year's Ohio State if things play out right around the rest of the country, and they could be the one that gets into that 4th spot this year. I think Penn State's going to be a really, really good team. There's never been a ton of Penn State fans around this channel, so I can't really speak to sort of the fan base mood or anything like that. But if I was a Penn State fan, I would be extremely excited about 2023. So I put them on the list of teams that are ready for this offseason to be over. That brings us to list number 2. Teams that wish the offseason could last forever. Florida State. Florida State wishes this offseason could last forever for a variety of reasons. Let's put, where does Florida State go? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I guess we'll put them there. Move that there. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh no, Florida State don't go there. Is Florida State in Uncle Woo's top 10? Oh my God. There you go, Florida State. He's always messing with you, taking you off the top 10. Florida State wishes this offseason could last forever. They've been terrible for 4 or 5 years. They had, 3-4 losing seasons in a row? Last year, their record was good. 9-3, 10-3 after a bowl win. But outside of that week 1 win against LSU, what do they have? I'm seriously asking, because the answer is nothing. They lost to Wake Forest, NC State, and Clemson, the 3 best teams they played outside of LSU. And then they did beat a depleted, didn't give a fuck Oklahoma team in some meaningless bowl game that nobody watched. But they're high on their horse now, or show pony, as it were. White Tonto ready to ride in, throw that flaming toothpick into the ground to kick things off against LSU in Orlando in week 1. Florida State's got a lot going on. Expectations for Florida State right now higher than they've been since Jimbo Fisher was there a decade ago. Best finish they've had in a while was last year. Highest preseason ranking they've had in probably a decade. And then you've got all the conference realignment stuff. And the reality for Florida State is, for their fans anyway, you're playing in the ACC in 2023, and you're playing in the ACC in 2024. You wish this offseason could last forever, because if it did, you could keep going back to pre-August 15th, this mythical date that you've made up in your mind where Florida State is announcing to the galaxy that they're leaving the ACC. Oh, just wait till August 15th, woo. Yeah, well, August 15th is going to come and go, and you're still going to be a member of the ACC this year, next year, and for the foreseeable future. I mean, that's just the way it is. I know it, you know it, and the Ecuadorian people know it. And they don't know anything about college football, but they know that. You're not leaving the ACC anytime soon. You're definitely not making any announcement to the contrary on or before August 15th. For that reason alone, Florida State, man, wishes they could just stay in the offseason forever so they don't have to come to terms with the reality that they're wrong, Uncle Lou is right, and you're going to be in the ACC this year and next year. You're not announcing anything on or before August 15th. Then you've got the whole living up to expectations part. Now, I'm pretty high on FSU. I can't let the idiocy of Florida State fans over the last couple of weeks when it comes to realignment, I can't let their idiocy cloud my judgment. I do think Florida State is a legitimate top 10 team in 2023. I do think Jordan Travis is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I do think Florida State's offense is going to be one of maybe the best in the ACC. I love the additions they made through the transfer portal, particularly Jaheim Bell. I do think they're going to have maybe the second best defense in the ACC behind Clemson, and I do think they could win the ACC. In fact, I did a Florida State prediction. I've got them at 11-1. I've got them losing to LSU in week 1, but then running the table and likely setting up a rematch with Clemson in the ACC title game. A rematch that if Florida State wins, they'll be sitting there at 12-1 with an ACC title and could find their way into the playoffs. I'm not sure I would predict all of that to happen in terms of, if you asked me to name 4 playoff teams right now, I don't know that I'd name Florida State, but the point is I think they're one of a handful of teams that's got a legitimate shot. So what I feel about Florida State expansion-wise and what fools of themselves their fans have made over the last couple of weeks has nothing to do with how I think Florida State's going to perform on the football field in 2023. I think they're going to have a pretty good season. I think they're going to have a pretty good season. But man, their fans in particular wish they could just stay in the offseason forever. Then they never have to confront this August 15th deadline, and they never have to confront the possibility of not living up to monumental expectations on the football field in 2023. Now, this next team we're about to talk about might be in the roughest shape of any team we talk about today. We've talked about some teams who were terrible last year, right? But they're ready for the offseason to end so they can get on the field and start changing some people's minds, right? This next team was so bad, not just last year, but also the year before. And their fans know there is no hope of turning it around, neither this year or next year. These fans want to live in permanent offseason mode till at least 2025. Florida. I am, of course, obviously talking about the Florida Gators. The Florida Gators have had back-to-back losing seasons. True enough, only one of those was under their current coach, Billy Napier, but nevertheless, back-to-back losing seasons. They're staring down the barrel of a third straight losing season in 2023. And when the SEC released the schedules for 2024 a few weeks back, which includes the additions of Texas and Oklahoma, Florida was widely considered to have been given one of the tougher schedules in the league. Most likely going to be looking at 4 losing seasons in a row for Florida. So, no, Florida and their fans, they're sad that the offseason is ending, not glad. They would love to live in permanent offseason mode where they can brag about June recruiting titles and meaningless things like that. Florida's in rough shape. Their quarterback situation is an absolute mess with no signs of improvement in the immediate future. Graham Mertz will be the quarterback this year. Whether he leaves or comes back next year, the best they're going to have is this DJ Lagway kid. And look, DJ Lagway may end up being a really good QB. The odds of him being a great QB his freshman year, though, are pretty slim, as they're slim for any true freshman QB. There's a reason very few freshman quarterbacks start in this country on major college football teams, and a reason why of the ones that do, very few are successful in the first year. Everyone always wants to point to something like a Trevor Lawrence. As good as Trevor Lawrence was, he didn't start until game 5 of his freshman year. And let me tell you, Trevor Lawrence is probably the most NFL-ready high school football player most people have ever seen. DJ Lagway is not that. So even if DJ Lagway ends up being good as a sophomore or a junior, you're talking about the 25 and 26 seasons maybe. It's what's going to be next year. Graham Mertz is a disaster. Florida's defense could be a little bit better than last year, but offensively, forget scoring points. They're going to have a hard time getting first downs. I like Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver, but you got nobody to throw him the ball. You lost half your offensive line. They're gone. Etienne's a good running back, but nobody to block for him. And without Anthony Richardson, when it comes to the run game anyway, teams can focus on Etienne. You don't have to worry about Graham Mertz beating you with his legs or his arm. But Florida fans would love nothing more than to live in permanent offseason mode, because they know when the season comes around, Sunbelt Billy's going to start losing games again, and people are going to start pointing out all these ridiculous stats that are going on at Florida in terms of number of SEC losses over a certain number of years and first coach to have this type of record and against this many SEC. It's just going to be a bunch of bad news starting to come out for Florida when they start to lose games. They play Utah on the road at Utah to kick things off, a likely loss. Now, to be fair, we said it was a likely loss last year and Florida won the game. But we'll see. We'll see. But anyway, they're a significant underdog there. So that's Utah. And then, of course, they got to play. Look who they play. They play Georgia. Almost everyone has them ranked 1. They play LSU. Everybody's got them in the top 5 or 6. Who else do they play? They play Florida State. They're in everybody's top 10. They play Tennessee. Tennessee's in everybody's top 15. We'll talk some about them in a minute. Their schedule is just absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. They're likely to have a losing record, and next year it won't get any better. Florida would love nothing more than to live in permanent offseason mode. So no, they're not happy the offseason is over. They're sad the offseason is over. Now, these people don't know it yet, but they're going to wish, boy, are they going to wish that the offseason could last forever. Colorado. Now, we all know, and if you don't, you should be aware, there are no Colorado fans, at least not that anybody has ever seen. And you're saying, well, Lou, I see people all over the internet talking about Colorado and how good they're going to be. And yeah, those are Deion Sanders fans. Those are Deion Sanders fans. They've never seen a Colorado football game. Ever. They're prime stands. That's what they are. Not only are they not Colorado fans, they're not even college football fans. In fact, they don't know anything about it at all. Colorado's going to be absolutely horrendous in 2023. And it's got nothing to do with whether or not Deion Sanders is a good head coach, a bad head coach, a great head coach, or a terrible head coach. We're not going to know. Colorado's roster is probably the worst in the Power Five. It's undersized. There's playmakers, not enough. What's the quarterback's name? Shedeur Sanders? Shedeur Sanders might be pretty good. Travis Hunter might be pretty good. Kamani McLean might be pretty. They got a handful of good players. They don't have the roster top to bottom to compete, not even in the Big 12. And again, it gets back to the schedule. They open up on the road at TCU. That's a loss. They got to play Nebraska. That's probably a loss. That's just their non-con. Then they play Colorado State. If they don't beat Colorado State, they might go winless. If they can't beat Colorado State, they might go winless. They'll probably beat Colorado State, but then the Pac-12 schedule starts. And again, it's just absolutely brutal. I mean, they play all of the top 4 or 5 teams in the Pac-12. Those are all going to be losses. The only thing close they have that you could even consider toss-up games is like the Arizona schools. And is it Cal or Stanford? I think Stanford. They're probably looking at a 3-9 season. Now, again, that's not that bad. Considering where Colorado has been, 3-9 is not that bad. That's not why they're on this list of teams that are sad that the offseason is ending. They're on this list of teams that sad the offseason is ending because the Colorado people that are running around don't understand any of that, what I just said. I might as well be speaking Mandarin Spanish. I mean, they have no clue what I'm talking about because they don't know anything about college football. They're not college football fans. They're either Deion Sanders fans from when they were kids. Maybe they're NFL fans who are just latching on to Colorado because they like the Deion story. I mean, I don't know, but they're not college football fans. And they're all over the internet talking about Colorado could compete for the Pac-12. Colorado can win 10 plus games. Prime said they're going out to win every game. What do you expect him to say? Deion's going to go on camera and go, we get 4 wins. No, come on. You know how coaches are. The fans aren't supposed to fall for that shit, but these idiot Deion Sanders fans, not even going to call them Colorado fans because they're not. These idiot Deion Sanders fans think Colorado's fixing to come out and reinvent the wheel, win 9, 10 plus games, compete for the Pac-12. They're just absolutely wrong, stupid, retarded, ignorant, and 5-star dummies because it's not happening. Colorado, not glad the offseason is over. Sad the offseason is over. And guess who else is sad the offseason is over? Our buddy the Gumps. Yep, our buddy the Gumps. They're absolutely livid and irate that the offseason is over because now they actually have to play games without Bryce Young, without Will Anderson, without Jahmyr Gibbs. They actually have to go out and attempt to prove all the dumb shit that their fans have been saying over the last 8 months. That they're somehow going to be better with Ty Simpson than they were with Bryce Young. That they're somehow going to be better with Jace McClellan and 2 freshmen who have a grand total of 0 yards rushing in their career in college. They're going to be better with that than they were with Jahmyr Gibbs. That they're somehow going to be better with just Dallas Turner than they were with Will Anderson and Dallas Turner. You can't name a single area where Alabama has improved from last season to this season. Maybe secondary, maybe offensive line. They're losing a Heisman QB, the best they've ever had in Bryce Young. They're losing their best playmaker from last year in Jahmyr Gibbs, who was also their leading wide receiver, a running back. They're losing the best pass catcher they had outside of that, which was a tight end. They return all the receivers. Same receivers who led the SEC and dropped passes last year. They return all those players who couldn't stay on sides last year and kept committing penalties. They returned the majority of the secondary that gave up 52 points to Tennessee. And they return a head coach who got beat by Brian Kelly. So, Plus two brand new two coordinaters, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. I like the defensive coordinator hire, Kevin Steele. I get what they're trying to do, turn the clock back. Kevin Steele was there a long time ago. You want to kind of take it back to quote unquote old school Bama football. Nick Saban's first 5-6 years there. I get it. They want to do that offensively too. Bring in Tommy Rees, guy's 27 years old. Then you go out and get his quarterback too, Tyler Buckner. Jesus Christ. Same Tyler Rees and Tyler Buckner who led Notre Dame to a grand total of 13 points in a loss against Marshall last year. You bring him in post-spring game because the spring game was just an abject failure and a disaster. Because it turns out Jalen Mildew and Bart Simpson don't know what the fuck they're doing when it comes to playing quarterback at a college football level, which is something most people already knew. Alabama fans still don't want to admit it. The coaches knew it. That's why as soon as spring practice ended, they went out and got Tyler Buckner. And, they're back. They're back. I cannot tell you how many Bama fans I've heard say, this team reminds me of 2015. 2015, you had Derrick Henry, who had the single greatest season any SEC running back has ever had and has went on to be the best running back in the NFL for the last 6 years or whatever it is. Where's that on this roster? And don't tell me Justice Haynes. I like Justice Haynes. He's going to be a really good running back. Probably the best running back on your team the minute he got there. He's 18 years old. He's never ran he doesn't have 1 yard in college. Don't tell me he's going to give you in 2023 as a true freshman what Derrick Henry gave you in 2015. What else did you have in 2015 that you don't have now? Don't tell me you had Lane Kiffin as offensive coordinator. Oh, and who you have now? Reese's Pieces. Wow. What else did you have? Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley. Where's Calvin Ridley on this team? He doesn't exist. Like I said, you led the SEC in drop passes last year. Likely to repeat it again this year. Do 21-year-olds just suddenly learn how to catch? How did these people get scholarships? If they couldn't catch passes from Bryce Young, who has pinpoint accuracy from 40 to 50 yards away, how in the blue fuck are they expected to catch passes from something called Ty Simpson, Jalen Mildew, or Tyler Buckner? Come on, man. But the Alabama fans think they're back. Of course, they're going 100-0. They blame their coordinators for everything the last 2 years. It was weird. Who hired those coordinators? I can't remember. Who hired those two coordinators? Somebody let me know in the comments. I can't remember who hires coordinators at Bama. Let me know. But everything was the coordinator's fault. So you bring in friggin' Tommy Rees and Kevin Steele, turning back the clock on one hand with Kevin Steele and Back to the Future with the other. And Tommy Rees, this guy's 13 years old. It's just weird. Bama's the most talented team in the country. And Nick Saban's the greatest college football coach of all time. So Bama's going to win a lot more games than they lose. But they're not winning the national title. And to listen to Bama fans, nothing else matters. So Bama fans, this season's going to be a complete waste of time for you. Now, you should watch. And you should watch Uncle Lou. But I'm just telling you now, this season is going to end for you the exact same way the last two seasons ended, with you watching two teams playing the national title who aren't Alabama. That's just what's happening. Y'all wish the offseason could stay forever so you could just run around talking about how you're rebuilding again. All right. I saved these two teams for last, okay? And I know what you're thinking. Uh-oh, here it comes. Not really. The reason I saved these two teams, I can't tell if these two teams, Clemson and Tennessee, are glad the offseason is ending or sad the offseason is ending. I think both of these teams in 2023 have a lot to prove. Let's start with Tennessee. And this isn't going to be trash talking either. The trash talking is mostly done. I can't say that. I probably can't talk about Clemson and Tennessee for more than a few minutes without a couple of jokes. But anyway, this for the most part, this isn't trash talking. Let's put Tennessee up here where they go between TCU and Texas. There you go. Sounds about right. There you go. I am extremely curious to see how Tennessee fares in 2023. There's no denying that last year was a great year for Tennessee. It's the best year they've had, arguably, since 1998 when they won it all. There's been years where they won the East in the 2000s after that. But in terms of how their team played and some of the big wins that they had, I mean, that win at home against Bama, monumental. They beat Florida, sort of two monkeys off their back in the same season there, right? They go on to not only make a New Year's Six bowl game, first time they've done it, first time they've done that in the playoff era. They go on to win it. And not just win it, but absolutely beat the bejesus and the will to live out of the Taters. A successful season by any measurement for Tennessee last year. I know a lot of trash talk on the internet, a lot of trash talk on this channel. Oh, they lost to Georgia. Oh, they lost to South Carolina. Oh, they didn't even win their division. Oh, they missed out on the playoffs. Tennessee was a really good team last year, and they were a dangerous team, especially offensively. Now, we all know the shortcomings. The defense is an absolute mess, and that's 1 year out of the last 20 that they've mattered. That's not trash talk either. That's just facts. Just talked about Alabama and the questions I have about them. Alabama's been winning 10-plus games for 15 years straight since Nick Saban got there. Last year was Tennessee's first 10-win season since the 90s. I'm not convinced that Tennessee's just going to strap their helmets on, run out on the field, and win 10 games again. I have to see a team do that more than once. Now, there are some teams I feel that way about. Probably Ohio State. Probably Alabama. Probably Georgia. Probably Michigan. Probably LSU. Teams that probably just, you don't even have to really do a lot of research or study up on. You just say, well, they'll probably win 10 or more. You could 5. Tennessee's not one of those teams. That doesn't mean I don't think they're going to win 10 games this year. But because it only happened the one time, I think it creates a lot of curiosity around Tennessee for 2023. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think Tennessee is going to be talked about more this season. I'm not talking about by me on YouTube or laughing or any of that. I mean, just in general college football conversation, whether that happens on SiriusXM radio, on whatever afternoon show happens to be coming on, whether it's on College Football Final on ESPN in the afternoons, whether it's on the Feinbaum call-in show, whether it's SportsCenter bringing a college football guy on to talk about the landscape of college football. I just feel like Tennessee's going to be mentioned and talked about way more heading into 2023 than probably any season in a lot of your lifetimes. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That can have some recruiting advantages. It can have some momentum and perception advantages. So, we'll see. But, they lose Hendon Hooker, who had a borderline Heisman-type season. They lose not just their leading wide receiver, but their top 2 wide receivers. So the question becomes for Tennessee and Josh Heupel, in my opinion, heading into 2023, at least on the offensive side of the ball, is this going to be an Ohio State situation where every couple of years they lose a 5,000-yard quarterback, but no matter who they replace him with, plug and play, another 5,000 yards. That's been the case at Ohio State, seems like year after year. Is that going to be the case for Tennessee? Is Joe Milton going to step in to this Josh Heupel Tennessee offense and pick up right where Hendon Hooker left off? I think it's a fair question to ask. Joe Milton has been around forever. He's a 6-year guy. Joe Milton has now been in college just as long as Stetson Bennett was in college last year. So all the jokes you all made about Stetson Bennett and how long he's been in college, every single one of those jokes now applies to Joe Milton, okay? He's been there forever. This will be his first ever season as a full-time starter. He started a couple of years ago under Josh Heupel in the beginning of the season, didn't play well, got benched. Hendon Hooker came in, and that was all she wrote. Hendon Hooker finished that season, 21, and then Hendon Hooker was the starter all last season, 22, until he got hurt in the end, and Joe Milton came back in, which played well against Clemson. But it's a fair question. Is Joe Milton going to take the field for Tennessee and give them what Hendon Hooker gave them last year? It's a fair question, and it's not a question that anybody can answer. We can have opinions. That goes for Tennessee fans. That goes for non-Tennessee fans. That goes for YouTubers. That goes for the guy sitting next to you on the bar stool this weekend. Everybody's got an opinion on it. We just don't know. I am a believer in Josh Heupel's offense. I am. And I'm leaning towards it being a plug-and-play type of thing like Ohio State has. If you had to pin me down right now, one way or the other on Joe Milton, I think he's going to have numbers similar to what Hendon Hooker put up last year. I do. I think there could be a couple of key exceptions. I don't think they'll score 52 points against Alabama this year. I'm going to go out on a limb. And this is something I've talked to Tennessee fans about this offseason. Tennessee's plan cannot be to score 52 points against Alabama every year and win 52-49, because that plan is doomed from the beginning. You won last year, and that's great. You better figure out a way not to give up 45 points to Alabama, though, and talk more about the defense in a second. So that, I don't see that happening. And then they get Georgia at home. So like last year, they only scored 13 points against Georgia. I think they probably score more than that this year. So I think they probably score more against Georgia than they did last year. I think they probably score less than they did against Alabama. I think they probably give up less points to South Carolina than they gave up last year. It's going to be a mixed bag for Tennessee. In terms of overall record, they play at Alabama. They get Georgia at home. They host Texas A&M. They got Virginia to start the season. And then you're looking at Kentucky, Florida, South Carolina. How many of those three teams can they beat? If they beat Florida, Kentucky, and South Carolina, 9-3 is the absolute basement. And that means they would have to lose to Bama, Georgia, and probably Texas A&M. And I don't think that's happening. I think Tennessee is probably going to win 10 games again in the regular season. Which 10 will it be? That's important, because Georgia is probably not going to lose more than one game. So we'll see what that means for who wins the East and different things like that. But so I'm not sure if Tennessee fans should be glad the offseason is ending, because look, they're coming off their best year in a long time. They deserve to brag this offseason. They did a lot of bragging this offseason in different ways. And I think they deserved it, because they've been down and out for a long time on the internet. And they kind of had their moment in the sun a little bit. And it was kind of good to see, honestly, the Tennessee fans have something to be excited about. So in that respect, maybe, they wish the offseason would go on forever. On the other hand, they probably are glad it's ending, because they're ready to prove to the ones that do doubt that it's kind of a one and done thing. They're ready to prove, no, it's not a one and done thing. We're here to stay. Josh Heupel is the one for us. This is the right move. The defense is going to be better. You'll see, that kind of thing. So no real trash talk there on Tennessee. Just a very interesting offseason. And the same thing for Clemson. Clemson has lost 3 games each of the last 2 years. Clemson's lost 3 games each of the last 2 years. They go right here between Colorado and the Dukies. There they go. Clemson's lost 3 games each of the last 2 years. So therefore, you have to at least consider the possibility they lose 3 again. There are Clemson fans running around saying it's disrespectful and insulting to suggest that Clemson could lose 3 games. No, it's not. It's not. There's only a handful of teams in the entire country that deserve to feel insulted or disrespected if you pick them to lose 3 games. And Clemson ain't one of them. They've lost 3 games each of the last 2 years. There's nothing insulting or disrespectful about it. Clemson fans are weird. Clemson fans are, let me save that for a different video. I just want to talk about the offseason for Clemson. It's funny listening to Clemson fans talk about their seasons the last 2 years. And this is something that I've mentioned before and applies to other teams too. If you want to know what fans really think, I mean really think about their team, you have to find them talking about their team to other fans of their team. Generally. What I mean is, very rarely on the internet, publicly, for anybody and everybody to see, is a fan going to come out and tell you what they really feel or really think about their team. Normally on the internet, it's chest bowed out. We're going 100-0. My team's better than your team. That kind of thing. When you can find fans talking amongst themselves, a lot more truth and honesty comes out. And so you got to find these places on the internet where Clemson fans congregate and hear them talk. Clemson fans, when they talk to you on the internet, oh, people act like the world's falling because we went 10-3. Everybody else would love to go 10-3. I don't know why people are making fun of Clemson for going 10-3 when they wish they could go 10-3. That's what they say on the internet. When they talk amongst themselves, you know what they say? Man, we fucking lost 3 games, man. Terrible. Terrible. Got beat by South Carolina. Got blown out by Tennessee. Lost to Rudy. Offense was terrible. Defense gone off to the NFL. It's doom and gloom. Doom and gloom. A lot of people are picking Clemson to lose 3 games. I think the over-under is 10 for Clemson. And the Vegas win total is 10, which means half the money's on the under, which would be 9. Again, not insulting or disrespectful to think that Clemson could potentially go 9-3. You know, they play Florida State. They play South Carolina again at the end of the year. They play Notre Dame. They play Duke. They play NC State. I mean, it's not any, of course they could lose 3 games. Now, they got reasons to be optimistic and get Garrett Riley in to replace Brandon Streeter. Brandon Streeter was an absolute disaster. And, hats off to Dabo Swinney. He did what he had to do. He did what he had to do. He fired Brandon Streeter after 1 year. It was a disastrous hire. The offense was terrible. The ukulele was bad. For 2 years, he's gone. So you got Cade Klubnik. Okay, be excited. But do you really want the offseason to end for Cade Klubnik? A lot of talk from Clemson fans about Cade Klubnik. You know what they don't want to talk about? What he did last year on the field. They don't want to talk about that. They still want to talk about his potential. Okay, yeah, he's got potential, but this kid has played significant playing time. I know he didn't start until the end of the year, but you Clemson fans remember, he was shuffling Cade Klubnik into a lot of games last year, Dabo was. Quit acting like Cade Klubnik is a blank slate. We saw Cade Klubnik play significant parts of games last year, especially towards the end of the season. And what did we see? We saw more interceptions than we did touchdowns. We saw Cade Klubnik start against that terrible Tennessee defense we just got done talking about. We saw Cade Klubnik start against that terrible defense and lead the Taters to a total of 13 points. That was different offensive coordinator. I know. But here's the thing. Are you happy the offseason is ending, or are you sad the offseason is ending? Because once we kick things off, you can't talk about what Garrett Riley did at TCU with a offense full of 5th and 6th year seniors who had been together forever, a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback in Max Duggan, and a first-round NFL wide receiver in Quentin Johnston. Something Clemson doesn't have. You don't have a Heisman QB. Cade Klubnik is not giving Clemson what Max Duggan gave TCU last year. That's not happening. One of the reasons why is because you don't have a Quentin Johnston. In fact, you don't have a single wide receiver anybody can even name outside of a handful of Clemson fans. What you do have is a front 4 playing in the NFL now. Now, you've recruited well, so I do think Clemson's defense front 7 will be okay. We'll see about the back end. Clemson was like 90th against the pass last year. 90th? Gotta improve on that, Tater, man. During the offseason, you can talk about how much you're going to improve on that. But once the offseason ends and the season starts, you got to actually do it. Duke's got a returning quarterback. The offseason is over.